Just a word on safety. No. Well, we're talking about sharpening, and the operative part of sharpening is sharp. And I want your fingers to come out intact. So we're going to be getting a good hold on the instruments and a good hold on what we're sharpening. And be careful what we're doing. How many of you are here today because you just want your equipment to work? I mean, your shovel, your hoe, your knife. I mean, work. Dull. And a lot of us like that. How many of you just like to have it work? Don't care about sharpening, but you want it to work. All right. How many of you are here because you like sharp things, but you don't want to spend your lifetime and your life savings doing it? I'm there. How many of you are stark-waving maniacs? I mean, you are fanatics. But you have no hair on your left arm because you'll take your spouse's kitchen knife and you'll hone it and sharpen it and hone it, and then you shave the hair off your left arm and you pick it up. And there, hair off your left, and you impress people. And you can take pieces of paper and you go, ha, ha, ha. And it really is nice. I mean, there's a feeling of power. How many of you can identify? I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. This is not for you. You can learn plenty, but it is a basic class. We're into the basics. So let's get into it. Basic principles. Basic principles 1. Get good steel. There's a lot of garbage out there right now. Used to be made in Japan. Now it's made in China. But even some of the American stuff is really crud metal. Scissors, for instance. I mean, it's tacky. Anyway. Get good stuff. Garbage in, garbage out. You can't make a small purse out of a sow's ear type stuff. And so a lot of the older metal, I mean, if you get your garage sales and old farm sales and things like that, some of those old tools are good steel. So you have to have good basics to start with. Number 1. Number 2, good shape. You have to have a decent shape. Now, if you make a knife out of something like that, it's not going to be very good. You can put a bevel on it, a bevel on here, but you're going to just be smashing things. I mean, here, sharpen this ball back. Is it a knife? No. You want the right shape. So right, good bevel, good shape. 3, if you have a really fine knife, don't burn it. I mean, you can get on a grinder and grind it on, and here's what it does. I'll show you. I did that to this knife. Look at that. See that blue spot right there? Amber spot around it? Those are burn marks. You took the temper out of the blade there. You changed the temper. The temper means that you change the arrangement of the molecules in the steel. It means they're either harder or softer. If they're harder, they'll chip. If they're softer, they'll smush. Neither way, you weaken your blade. Do not heat these things. Keep them cool. If you use a grinder, yes, all industry uses grinders and sanders. And, a sander like this, a 1x30 little Delta sander, I use all the time. But keep it cool. That's a knife maker's sander right there. If you heat it, it's not going to be as good. So, number 4, you want a good edge. Now, what do I mean by a good edge? A good edge on a knife is about 30 degrees. See, it's about like that. A good edge on a lawnmower blade is going to be about 45-degree angle. It's a lot more blunt angle. One more time, it's still on. A good edge on a pair of scissors is going to be more like 75 to 80 degrees. It's almost straight across. It's almost straight, but it's just a little tipped. 75 to 80 degrees, But scissors are almost like they're a shear, not a slicer. So it's a little bit different on scissors than it is on, and on your pruning shear, sometimes it's a little different. Some of those are a slicer blade. Some of those are really do have a slicer blade on that. Okay. Good angle. Now, good edge. This has the angle on it. It's 30 degrees, but the edge is shot. The edge is rounded over. And this is what a lot of your knives look like. Now, microscopic level, they round over and they don't cut. Okay? So the purpose of sharpening is to bevel this to where this side meets this side up here. And you want that to come to a real sharp point. That's what sharpening is about. Okay. Where are we at? Good edge. If you're in doubt, if you have questions about what an edge should look like, look at a new one. See what kind of edge they've got. See what kind of angle they've got on that edge. And often, follow it. Even if you have an old hoe or something like this. I mean, this I got out of a garage sale, somebody has. But look at the angle on that edge. Yep. Follow it. Keep that angle. Okay. So now, if you are sharpening, let's get into it. Let's start sharpening some of this stuff. I'm going to say my wife had a little potting trowel, potting shovel, and look at the edge on that. It's just sheet metal. It's just sheet metal, and it's not that it doesn't do okay for just digging around soft potting soil and things like that, but if you have to go dig out a dandelion, or if you go to cut anything or scoop anything, no, it doesn't do well at all. So, what I do to sharpen these, some of these coarser tools, and you don't need a knife edge on that, although I use 30 degrees on these. You don't need a real sharp edge on that. You don't want to slit your leg. But you do want to slide through things. So, I'm going to take this, I'm going to sharpen it from about here over to about here. Right? From about here over to about here. And I'm going to do it on a sander. It's a little Delta sander, all right? And I'm going to take that and I'm going to hold it up there on about a 30-degree angle, and I'm going to sharpen that thing. Now I'll turn off the,
Wait a minute, yeah.
Here for a second, because it'll probably overpower that. But I'm going to sharpen this, and then we'll get back to it. It doesn't take long. Here it goes.
I forgot about this, how to sharpen garden tools. I'm getting in on part of it.
Okay, I've beveled this. Now I haven't beveled it way down, but enough to where it has some edge on it, and it will scoop and it will do just fine. Now, if I were going to go to a shovel now, I picked up a shovel in a garage sale. Is this any good? It says number 2 tempered steel USA. Probably. Better than mild steel, better than a lot of the junk that's out there. So I will use this shovel, and I'll put another handle on it. I got that up at Packwood garage sale up there. Same thing. I'm going to bevel it from about here to about here. 30-degree angle. Same way. I probably don't need to do that even. It's not bad right now. It's not really bad right now. So I'll just touch up that angle on the side. And if it were thicker metal on the edge, I'd taper it a little bit all the way around just to make it slide through the dirt a little easier for you. And that's all that needs. Okay? Let's try something different. I'm going to say, let's look at scissors. Scissors, These scissors are terrible. These are fiskars too. I say they're terrible because they have a rivet going through them in the middle. They're cheap. There's this rivet going through the middle. Now, if the scissors are too floppy, you can take and you can pound on that rivet and make it tighter. If it gets too tight, good luck. I mean, and you can't take it apart to sharpen this one and sharpen this one. And so a lot of these scissors
I'll be there in a second.
pretty much disposable. Now, if you have a nice pair of shears, which I found an old pair of Proto shears, these shears are excellent shears. Oh, give me a piece of paper, come on. These are excellent shears, but you know, I mean, so this has a bolt through it. You can take that bolt off, take the nut off. Usually you have to get the pieces apart to do a proper job of it and to adjust them properly with the tension. Now these come apart, there's usually 4 parts, the nut, the bolt, and two sides. Now these edges, the edges on these they're like a scissor, and they're at 75 to 80 degrees. That means it isn't totally flat across there. It's beveled just a little bit. All right? And I'll take that, and I'll go to my, this is a cheap diamond hone that I bought at Harbor Freight, and it's not real expensive. It's $12, okay? But you can take these and you can hold them about 75 to 80 degrees. Now you saw me spray some oil on there, that's like WD-40. And this is about 400 grit right here. The edges weren't too bad, the edges were pretty good to start with. And so I'm just tuning them up a little bit. I don't know if you can see this or not. Bright metal all the way across that edge now. Same with this one. I'm going to spray a little WD-40. Well, it's not WD-40. This is DuPont, something DuPont made, but same diff. Well, it's not same diff, but it's similar. You want a pretty thin oil. Okay. Now, I didn't spend long on this. They were not too bad to start with. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these back together, and we'll just take the bolt and throw it through there, put that through there, put the nut back on. Now these, yeah, the nut's kind of tight. You're going to flop, you don't want it to flop. Tighten them up a little bit. Still flopping. Now you can tighten it up so much that you can't move it in and out. Almost. Now how is that? Almost. Just a little bit more. You want them snug, not too tight. Let's see if I did any good. Not bad. Doesn't take forever. It's not a big deal, but yeah, you need to be able to get them apart to really do a good job on that. So that's a pair of scissors we just sharpened. I mean, you can find splitting mauls, you can find axes, you can find all kinds of stuff out there. And tune them up. Buff them with a wire wheel, and sharpen them. Now let's see. Okay, I'm back. This is a belt sander, and I just changed the belt on. You saw a little blip in the screen there. There was an 80 grit belt on there that we used for the coarse stuff, and this is a 120 grit belt now. What I'm going to do is, you know how dull this is. Remember, I wouldn't do that with this. and you gotta be careful anyway. But I'm gonna sharpen this, and some of you are gonna cringe because I'm using a belt sander. Keep the temperature down, okay? That means we keep the knife moving. We keep light pressure. I'm gonna take this dull as heck knife, and we're gonna sharpen it. I'll cut that. Well, let's try it with the sound on. About 15-degree angle, and then another 15 next place. $15-degree angle on this side, 15-degree angle on that side makes 30 for the blade. Now, if that blade's not cool enough to touch your face or your hand, it's way too hot. And you don't even want it on a momentary basis. Now, what I'm checking for, I'm checking to see if there's any flat spots on the blade yet. Do those edges come completely together, or are they still rounded over? And these are just a little bit rounded over here. You're going to do just a tiny bit more. Remember that Harbor Freight little diamond block? I could use something like this. This is $2.95 Harbor Freight, and it's a two-sided stone. It's a coarse and a fine. I could use that, but I already used the coarse on here, and I'm going to use sort of the fine on this. It's a 400 grit on this. It's not too fine. But I'm just going to show you that you don't have to take forever. The sharpening is really well. Okay. Now, how much you sharpen one side, you go 15 degrees one side. That's about as far as you can lay it over without scraping up your blade. Okay? I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm going to do something that a lot of people don't know about. It's called a strop. Now what in the heck is a strop? I just took a piece of wood and I glued a piece of leather. Now you know where the leather came from? This was a coating Goodwill, okay? It was just a cheap. And I glued it to the board, and I'm going to put something called green compound. You can get that at Harbor Freight for a few bucks, maybe $4.95 for a quarter pound. It'll last you forever. I'm going to just scrape that over the top of the leather, get it into the rough surface of the leather, and I'm going to take and I'm going to, okay, 15 degrees, and I'm sort of like polishing the blade. Now, how long have I taken? I haven't taken very long at all to do this. I mean, I could probably do it all in a couple of minutes. And let me show you something. Okay, hair. Will it cut a tomato? This is sharp. This is really sharp. It does not take long. It does not take a whole bunch of stuff. So if you were to go to Harbor Freight and you were to get a stone like this for $2.95, and if you were to get a piece of leather out of Goodwill and make a strop, all right, and get a little compound, put it on there, in just a few seconds, I would say no more than 2 minutes, you could take a knife that was nasty dull like that and turn it into a fine razor. You saw me cut it. You saw it. You saw the hair. Here. Pretty fanatic. It does pretty good. Okay. There we have it. There's so much to this. There are so many things you can do, and it's so easy. The belt sander, okay, it is a very versatile tool. Probably $49 Harbor Freight, you can go down to Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace like that. They're inexpensive. A 1x30 belt sander, I'll have it on the list. $2.95, come on. Or if you want to really get exotic, you can go and get a 4-sided home that has 200, 300, 400, and 600 grit on it. And you can sharpen most anything with that. Now, some of the purists and some of us fanatics get a little more exotic, and we really want it sharper or better or faster or something. Doesn't get too much better. I mean, as far as practicality, that kitchen knife you got to watch out for. Anyway, there it is. There you have it. Glad to have had you here today. And do you have any questions? We'll get Gary involved here, and he'll translate the questions. Thank you.
Outstanding job, Jerry. That was great.
Thank you.
So, questions?
I have a question, Jerry. How do you get the leather on that strop? Or does the wood come separate from the leather and then you put it together?
So you go down to Goodwill and you get an old jacket that has leather on it, or something, purse, I don't care what it is, cheap. Preferably thin leather, but it could be any leather. You get a board and you get some Elmer's glue, and you put the glue on the board, you slap the leather on the glue, and you let it harden. Now you can trim it up and do whatever you want to make it look better, but that's the basic idea. You just glue the leather to a flat board. That's all there is. Now that green compound that I talked about, you can get it at Harbor Freight. You can get it at a lot of places on the net. Amazon has it, but Harbor Freight's cheap and it's local. And it looks like this. You can get blocks. I mean, good grief. Harbor Freight's going to be a bigger block than that little chintzy block. But I mean, you get blocks of it that look like that. But I would use the green compound. The black compound that I've got in my hand cuts faster and it's much coarser. The green compound will polish. White compound will too. If you can only find white compound, use it, but I would use the green.
Jerry, is it kind of the same for, all these rusty tools I've been giving you, the hose and the weeder things?
Yep. Yep.
How do you get the rust off?
How do you get the rust off? Are you familiar with a wire wheel?
Yeah.
Do you have a bench grinder?
Okay. And then if you were going to do a hoe, would you do the back of the hoe like you did the shovel?
Yes.
Okay.
I would look at the bevel on the hoe, which way the bevel goes. Generally on tools like a hoe, you have one bevel, as opposed to on a knife, you often have two.
Right.
So instead of 15 degrees and 15 degrees, like on a good knife blade, you would have just one bevel and it would be 30 degrees.
Okay.
But I start out with a wire wheel and get the rust off or get the dirt off or get all that junk off. And sometimes I will take a pan. I go down to Dollar Tree and buy a big bottle of cola. And I dump the cola into the pan, and I dump after I get all the stuff off that I can get off, I dump it into the cola. And a day later, it has neutralized a lot of the rust on there.
It's way cheaper than vinegar.
And then get your Rust-Oleum paint, and you can shoot that, and it'll help prevent that rust from coming back.
Okay. And how do you know what grit to use on your belt sander? I saw you had two different grits. Do you kind of like hollow grind, hone? Do you have different ones?
If I were going with garden tools, it would make a difference in what I'm cutting. If I'm going with garden tools like a hoe or a shovel or something like that, I probably would use a grit like maybe 100 grit, simply because you don't want to spend all day doing it. Now, the key again to a belt sander is do not get it hot. Do not paint it. Do a little, do a little, do a little, feel it, do a little. But if you just hold it on there and grind it, you're going to have a burn mark like on that knife that I showed you. I'd go with 100 grit and see how that works. If you've got a fine edge already on a tool like a hoe or a shovel, you might use a 120 grit belt.
Okay, cool.
That's on the belt sander. Now, there are finer belts, but that belt's going by so fast. If you get too fine on the belt, you've got to really pay attention to the heat. And on a fine blade like a knife blade, often I don't use a belt sander on a fine knife blade.
Okay.
Because it's pretty well there already. And I'm just tuning it up. And so I probably won't go less than 400 grit to start with on a knife blade like that, simply because you don't need it. And I want to use the finest grit that will work. I don't want to be gouging and scratching and hogging where I just need to polish.
Okay.
Okay?
What type of oil would you use on your garden tools at the end of the season?
Okay, on the wood, I would use teak oil. If it's bare wood, often I'll use teak oil on the wood.
I was thinking
On
the metal.
On the metal, if any kind of oil.
Okay.
WD-40 is pretty fine and it evaporates. It was originally designed to displace water on some of the electrical equipment in the space project. And then it evaporates. But it's good for short term. If you're going to use it for storage, I would probably go with something like motor oil, like 1030 motor oil or something like that. A lot of us have a can of that around. Just put a thin coating on the blades, and it'll protect them.
Okay, thanks.
Jerry, when I'm trying to think what his name is now. When Dale was showing me how to sharpen the one-sided things like scissors and pruners, he said to run. He doesn't do it like you do. He just has a little hand thing, and he said to run the thing flat against the back of where you sharpen to remove burrs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think it's necessary?
Okay, start out with, here's a pair of pruning scissors. See the blade? The blade that cuts against the other blade is flat. It's flat across that side. You don't want to bevel that. You want to keep it flat.
Right.
You bevel this side.
Right.
That is away from the contact of the blade. You bevel that. Now your question or your thought was on a burr that develops where they intersect. So you don't want something curled over and hanging over the back side.
Right.
So what he's talking about is laying that flat on something and
yes.
grinding.
Yes.
If you do that, I would use only the finest stone. Don't use a coarse stone for something like that. You're picking at nits here a little bit.
Okay.
And that's okay. And that's good. But you don't want to use a coarse stone to take off something that's really fine. So I would use a real fine stone and then flatten that edge just a little bit and you'll be great.
Okay, thank you.
The first time you close the scissors, it's going to take that off.
Okay.
But if you don't want to have that to cut to start with and have a gritty, first closure on those scissors, yeah, I would polish that edge a little.
Well, with no experience, you told me that, and I take it as Bible because I know nothing. Well, I knew nothing until I listened to your talk. Okay, I know more now.
No.
Great job, Jerry, by the way. Excellent.
Well, thank you.
Other questions?
Jerry, can I ask you another quick question?
Go for it, Trish.
I'm actually looking at one of my bonsai tools, so it's probably a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tool like this. It closes, and one edge is a little higher than the other.
Uh-huh.
I look at it, and I see the cutting on this one is out here. The cutting edge is right there, or right out here. The other tool, the cutting edge, is on the inside.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just bring it to you one day and let you.
Bring it to me, let me take a look at that.
Okay.
And we'll talk about what it's used for and what that actually does. Are those nippers designed to be together and they're just shifted, or are they designed that way for a specific reason?
Yeah, there's a specific reason, and you're supposed to be able to feel one higher than the other.
Yeah, okay.
But,
Yeah, bring it in, let me take a look at that.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to try and tackle those. Gosh, this was great. Thank you.
One thing that I didn't mention, having gone through the video myself and coming up with questions, is what is a good knife? And I would say that the shape of the knife, you should be tapered, clear from the back of the blade to the cutting edge of the blade. It should be a full taper. A lot of cheap knives, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a flat, it's flat most of the blade, and then it bevels. And that's okay for cutting meat. But if you're cutting vegetables, if you're cutting squash or potatoes or something like that, it's a steep angle there and you have to push a lot. If you have it tapered all the way, it slides. It does a lot better that way. So full taper, the tang goes all the way through the handle. See the metal going all the way through the handle down there? You don't want some knife where the handle only comes down here and you have a big blade and you're just grabbing it by a little piece. You want it all the way through your grip. So those are two things on knives that are really important. The third one is the good steel that we talked about in the first principle. What knives have decent steel? You've got all kinds of different brands that you can recognize. I mean, it's Forstner, Victorinox. You've got Gerber, Wüsthof, Henkel. There's a lot of different brand names. Kershaw, whatever. A lot of Japanese. Not Ginsu. Anyway, good steel. If you have good steel, you'll save yourself a lot of grief. It just stays sharp and does the job.
And don't put them in the dishwasher.
Yeah, and if you put them in the dishwasher and you roll them around the drawer, you just get more experience sharpening. Some of you have seen things like this. It's a home. It's a what they call a steel, and it's fine lines on that thing. And if you see them, what it's designed to do is straighten out little bent over places on your blade. Okay, I mean the very, very, very microscopically fine edge on the blade bends over. It gets kinked, and you use that. Straighten out, and then you do it the other way, and it straightens that edge. And whereas your blade might be sharp, it's just bent a little bit or uneven a little bit. That straightens it out and can bring it back to very, very functional very quickly. So a lot of people have one of those in their drawer just to whip, 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 and then you don't have to sharpen it. It's already sharp.
You use that on scissors?
Not on scissors usually, because these things are big enough around you can't get to the back of your scissors. Let me show you what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
So you could do it, but you'd have to take the thing apart, and if you have the scissors, they'll sharpen them properly. Okay?
Hey.
WD-40, okay, this is not so much for you guys, but it is for you fanatics who are hanging in the background there. I know you're there. You use WD-40 on your stones or your diamond hones or things like that, and that works. A light finishing oil or even motor oil or something of that nature, but when you get over 1,000 grit, the film thickness on the oil is greater than the cutting thickness on the diamond. And so you'll skate and you cut down your sharpening capability on the really fine stones. And so on some of those, they use a finer oil and whatnot. But for what we've talked about here, it's not a big deal. And I just use WD-40.
Okay.
What else should we have said?
More questions? God, Jerry, you got it memorized.
Hey, Jeff, question for you.
Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, on your scissors, do you have to cut them? Do you have to, when you sharpen, do you sharpen one direction or do you go two directions?
One direction.
Okay.
If I have a blade like this, oh, give me a pair of scissors out of the drawer, wouldn't you? I put those away. Scissors are a mono bevel. Thank you. Scissors are a mono bevel. And it, like I said before, the angle isn't quite flat. It's just a little bit acute. It's about 75 to 85 degrees. And it's a single bevel going across there. Like the shears that I showed you in the picture, very similar to scissors. Same angle and mono bevel going across. Now you can bevel it back when you back up the blade a little bit, but the cutting comes from that first bevel. The back side of the blade, where the two blades come together, the back side of the blade here, you don't want to bevel that. You want it flat. You want these two blades to come flat together. And that was part of what Alice was talking about. She was talking about when you sharpen, sometimes the metal will roll over the back just a little bit. You'll get just a little burr across the back edge. And she was talking about laying that on a flat stone and polishing it or sharpening the back side, but it's flat, it's not angled. You want to keep that back side flat. If you bevel it, you ruin the scissors. Did I answer the question? I'm not sure.